All right. Hello, everyone. Hope all is well. All right. So today I'm on a Zoom call with Kelly Hale from Kingston, Ontario. So, Kelly, please do say hello.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
All right. And Kelly, maybe just give us a little quick background that you're an owner of a pub.
Yeah, I own Jack Tuesday Sports Pub in Kingston. I've been owner operator there for 16 years since 2005, and obviously I'm against all of these mandates and asking for vax passports and the masking because it's in my mind it's breaking the law. It's breaking privacy laws, breaking many laws, tried and true laws that we have, and I've been against it and was very vocal, putting a sign up on my billboard out front of my restaurant saying, say no to vax passports, all welcome at Jack's. So I let the whole world know before the passports were in effect that I wasn't going to comply with that. So, and here we are.
And now you've already done some litigation. And the focus of this video is that the absolute fact that you are not, I repeat, you are not using the charter.
No, Bill of Rights all the way.
All right, awesome. So the purpose of this video, everyone, I want this to be really focused in on. The purpose of this video, and it's certainly part of the reason why I have Kelly on, is to confirm that the charter is an attempt to remove God from being supreme when it comes to your fundamental human rights and freedoms. And therefore, the charter itself is declaring itself as God. And we set out to prove that in this video. And so we are here not only to tell every Canadian citizen that you should not invoke the charter, especially if you adore freedom, but to also announce that if you are considering yourself to be a God-fearing, Jesus Christ believing Christian, you cannot, I will repeat, you cannot invoke the charter in good conscience, because if you believe in God, you know that God is supreme and that Jesus Christ is Lord and that all creation is subject to God and under God, including the state. And I don't want to exclude those who may be, let's say, not Christians, because at the end of the day, you would still agree that the state should not be the one or ones that give you your rights, that they are yours simply by being human. Okay. And so we're going to set out here to show that the charter is a totalitarian document. And we believe that we'll be able to prove this simply by reading section 1 of the charter. So if you're watching this video, I'm just going to read it. Feel free to just Google section 1, Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and you will see it. All right, so we're going to break this down real slow. Okay, and again, we're going to show you how the charter is declaring itself as God. So section 1 of the charter states, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the rights and freedoms in it. Pause right there. It's guaranteeing you the rights and freedoms that are in it, meaning we've listed in the charter what the rights are. That in and of itself says we've declared what your rights are.
They're playing God.
They are playing God. They're saying, here's the rights that we are declaring for you, and we'll guarantee the ones that we're declaring for you. See? So I think this is very important to recognize that anything that's not in the charter, they're not guaranteeing that at all. In fact, they're declaring that you don't have those rights at all. Now, on top of it, what is the definition of guarantee? It's not for sure 100%. No, because all guarantees have limits.
Reasonable limits, my friend.
Reasonable limits. So if you're doubting me on the definition of guarantee, well, you don't have to, because the charter will tell you in section 1 that there are limits on the guarantees. But I really want you to focus on the idea, especially if you're a Christian, that the charter is saying we're declaring your rights. Not God. They're not inalienable. They're not absolute, and they're not from God. They're from us, and we wrote it in the charter for you, and here they are. and these are the ones we're guaranteeing. But of course, as you continue, it says subject only to such reasonable limits. Pause again. I love that Kelly's already laughing, because they are out the gate telling you, here's the rights that we're declaring you have, making themselves God. And then to further their position of declaring themselves God, they say, and by the way, if we decide we can limit them, we'll limit them. That's what the charter is saying out the gate. So it's supposed to be about your rights and freedoms. Guess what? It's about the rights and freedoms that they're declaring for you to the limits that they'll decide what they are, period. That's the deal. That, my friends, is totalitarianism. Now, they might have snuck it by us, but no more. So I'm going to repeat this. If you have any level of faith in God, and I'm going to especially sound out to the Christians, because I'm a Jesus Christ believer. I'm a Christian, and I cannot in good conscience invoke the charter, because that would be me agreeing that the state gives me my rights. And that would be me agreeing that the state not only gives them to me, but can control how much of them are mine. That's bottom line, that's idolatry. I don't know how else to say it, or statism.
And you know what, Shade? Ironically enough, we go to a courtroom and stand before a judge, and there's only one supreme judge, my friend, and we're all going to be judged by that judge at some point.
I love it. Awesome, Kelly. And we definitely agree that it's not going to be the man or woman that's, wearing a robe there somewhere in Kingston or in Ontario, right? That's not. No. Right. So we're going to continue to just finish section 1 to really peel this thing apart. In total, it says the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the rights and freedoms in it. So there's your limitation. It's and that's your declaration that they're guaranteeing you the rights, and they're declaring them. The charter is declaring it, and they're subject to such reasonable limits that they get to declare, prescribed by laws, as can be demonstrably justified. That means if they say it's justified, it's justified. And
which means it comes down to the judge's opinion.
Judge's opinion, and it doesn't have to, they can actually just use, they don't have to look at case law. They don't have to look at historical decisions. They can actually just purely use their own opinion and or public opinion. Mm-hmm. So if a decent amount of the public say, yeah, that was reasonable that, you shut down that assembly of, of a church, or you shut down a certain business, then the public seems to more or less think that's all right, at least some of the public. And I think it's okay. And that's my opinion. So done. It's reasonable and too bad for you. Okay. So, and then of course it ends with that nice, sweet little line, in a free and democratic society. You see the double, you see the double talk there, the double speak. How are you free and democratic if you're declaring what my rights are as the state, right? And then on top of it, you get to set the limit. And on top of it, you, meaning like one person, if I do take it to court, gets to decide whether it was justified or not, and solely based on their own opinion, not based on any historical decisions, not based on case law, not based on anything but the current opinion of that specific judge. Plain and simple.
The other cool thing too is with that, you have to invoke the charter. And I even said in court with the bill, you don't have to invoke anything. It can be cited at any time. And that's what I've used from day one, my AGCO hearing and 2 Superior Court dates. And we've argued successfully that the Bill of Rights applies, and the judge has not told me I could not use it.
And I noticed that too. So for those of you out there who are thinking about lawyers and things of this nature, best as I could tell, because I saw the transcripts, Kelly, you guys were kind enough to share them. It was clear to me that the Crown seemed to think that you had to do all this paperwork. And actually, it seemed like the Crown discovered, no, actually, you only have to do a ton of paperwork if you're using the charter.
Exactly. and in every correspondence, well, up until the last correspondence that was sent to us by Public Health's legal team. It was the first time in many letters that they didn't say at the bottom of the letter, "We urge you to seek legal counsel." I'm good, thanks.
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, because the bottom line is the charter is convoluted, and they force. If I'm understanding this correctly, too, when you're using the charter, you invoke Section 24, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah.
And in Section 24, and this is I'm going to speak again really loud to all citizens, okay, to all citizens, but I'm going to really narrow this in for Christians because I'm going to say this again. I don't think you can be in good conscience and in good faith and in good standing with God and invoke the charter because the charter is saying, no, the state is God. That's what that charter is saying. And remember, the charter isn't the Constitution. It's a legislation, if you will, best as I can tell. And again, I'm not a lawyer, neither is Kelly, but Kelly's representing himself. So he's a lawyer on his own case. And I've been really listening and studying this material. So take it for whatever you think it's worth. But the bottom line is that Section 24, right, is you invoking the charter because it needs to be invoked. If you don't invoke it, it's dead in the water. They want you to invoke it. They want you to invoke it.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
They want you to because then they can use Section 1. Section 1 is their big prize, okay, that they get to use. And that's the action. And by the way, if I'm understanding Section 24, please, everybody who's listening to this, double check. But if I'm understanding Section 24 properly, you are basically saying, because it talks about a court. Court doesn't mean like a courtroom with a jury. It means the exact opposite. It literally means one judge. So you're actually forfeiting, maybe without you realizing it, but you're forfeiting your right to a jury immediately, which again, if you're a Christian, you will understand fully in both Old Testament and New Testament with the Levitical priests, and post-resurrection, there was essentially a council, a jury. That's why they had Jesus's trials overnight. They were illegal because there would have been some people on the council that wouldn't have been okay with what they were doing. So if you want to, I'm going to reference some scriptures here. If you want to go to Deuteronomy 17:9 for in the Old Testament, but it's all over the Levitical priesthood. They always had numbers of priests so that they can make a decision, a jury, if you will. And then you can go to Acts 5, 26 to 40, where they set the apostles before a council, right? Because they were preaching. And one of the Pharisees, so there was many, and his name was Gamaliel. And he was the one who basically stood up and said, hey, if this is a bunch of fakery, it's going to die out on its own. Okay. But if it's not, and it's of God, you guys are fighting God. And the scripture goes out of its way to say, and the council agreed with him. So in other words, there was a jury. Okay. There was a jury there. And if it wasn't for the jury, if it was just for one Pharisee, all you need to do is have that one Pharisee that's, biased, and it's done. So it's not biblical to invoke a legislation that doesn't allow you to have a jury of your peers so that you can have an opportunity to sample the entire province or country, if you will, right? If you got one guy that's paid for by the state, in fact, Kelly, I'll have you talk about that this one person would be what? It'd be a judge, or she would be a judge that's paid for by the state.
That's right, exactly. And then the irony in all this too is they're basing everything that they've done to me on these 2 POA tickets they gave me for not following the Reopening Act, for masking and asking for vax passports. Well, everything's been under appeal. So I don't want to compare myself to Jesus in any way, and I never would that way. But that overnight trial, like you said, it's almost like they've taken the same stance with me. They've done everything unlawfully and rushed ahead to try and wipe me out and make an example out of me.
Because what you're saying is, because those appeals are in place, so much like, let's say, compared to a driver's, I got a ticket as I'm driving, right? And, but the charge doesn't go through until I either, admit that I'm guilty and pay the ticket, Or I say, well, listen, I want a day in court because I didn't roll that stop, for example. So
That's
then I
right.
wait for the court date. My license is still in my hand. I haven't lost my points. My insurance doesn't know that I got, because why? Because it still hasn't been decided upon yet. So your appeal was to say, hey, guys, you're jumping the gun. This is still got to be decided by a judge, and yet you're ambushing me without any final decisions being made. This is still up in the air. You're acting as if a decision has been made, but a decision has not been made. That's what's going on.
Yeah, and after my November 12th Zoom date with Superior Court, after they gave me the order, Superior Court order to close my doors, that's exactly what happened. The judge basically ruled and made a decision based on the fact that I had not appealed the 22 order, but I in fact had.
You did. Yes, absolutely you did. And so again, it's hard to necessarily determine whether they were just pretending they didn't see it or they really just didn't see it. But either way, you did file the appeal and they were incorrect. And yet they have continued to move forward with what I'll call, it's my personal view of it, an ambush. And again, much like the trial with Jesus, it was done overnight and they didn't have the complete counsel. They made sure they did it with only the people who were in agreement. So if you're, again, a God-fearing Christian, you should be really paying attention to this, because this is not the proper way biblically to conduct trials. And I will, again, kind of speak to those who may not be necessarily Christians. I can't help but think that you should see this as unfair as well, because like I made that analogy and I think it works. Until the judge decides that I actually did roll the stop, right? The points don't come off my license. So if we can do that for a traffic ticket, you don't think we should be doing that for people and businesses? I think that if we want
for someone's livelihood, like.
Thank you. Absolutely. And not just your livelihood, because I want to say this. Kelly hired, I'm going to say this for you, Kelly, because I know you on some level like to remain reserved. So I'm going to say this for you. He hired certain people in the nursing community, shall we say, that had lost their jobs because they refused the whammo tammo, if you know what I mean, right? And Kelly gave them a gig so that they could continue to pay their bills. Okay. So it's not just, Kelly's not speaking just to his own livelihood. He's speaking to the others that were on his team. So, and by the way, a little side note while I'm here, I am going to include in the description box below a link to a documentary, an independent documentary done on Kelly's story. Okay, so just click on that link. It'll be there for you. And in case you want to know a little more about Kelly's story, okay, but we really want to just focus here in this video on the idea that this is not good for Canadian citizens in general, that the charter is not something any of us should be invoking, and that if you are a God-fearing Christian, I'm going to say this again, you can't in good conscience invoke the charter. You just can't do it. Okay. I'm going to touch on one other thing that is very, very specific, I believe, to the charter. And it's going to also tie into Kelly's situation. And that is enjoyment of property, something that is clearly stated in the Canadian Bill of Rights. I repeat, it is clearly stated in Section 1A of the Canadian Bill of Rights that we all, without discrimination, have a right to enjoyment of property. I'm going to let you know, go to Section 7 of the Charter, and you'll see that you have these, remember, limited rights, reasonably limited rights. But guess what? You don't have enjoyment of property in the Charter. Best as I can tell, I haven't found it in there. So, you know that statement you might have heard from people from the World Forum talking about you will own nothing and yet you'll still be happy?
Oh, you'll be happy, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Klaus Schwab.
Yeah. I don't know that you should think he's joking, because if you go through that charter, that right that the charter claims that it's all in charge of giving you isn't even there. Okay. So Now, referring to my citizens, my Canadian citizens, guys, come on. You should have a right. This is just not questionable. You should have a right to own a piece of property, to own a house or a cottage or whatever. Okay. And it's not in there. It's not in your charter, but it is in the Bill of Rights. Maybe that's why they don't want you to mention the Bill of Rights. Maybe that's why they want you to invoke the charter, because there you have no enjoyment of property, best as I can tell. Please go through it and see if you can see it. But I'll tell you right now, best as I can tell, it's not in Section 7, right? So I don't believe that it's there. Now, biblically, you have a right, both in Old Testament and New Testament, to own land. It's a biblical thing. Go to 1 Kings chapter 21. Naboth owned a vineyard. Okay. And in fact, in verse 3, 1 Kings chapter 21, verse 3, Naboth actually says the land was an ancestral inheritance. Okay. So you owned land in the Old Testament. And of course, you read that section, and the king, along with his queen wife, did some horrible things, including manipulating the courtroom again. Yeah, bring out some false witnesses. And then they had Naboth done in so that the king could just go in there and scoop the land. Okay, so nothing new under the sun. If you want some New Testament scriptures, I'm speaking especially to the Christians, go to Philemon chapter 1, verse 2. It's the house that belonged to Apphia and Archippus, which the church was right in the house. You can go to Acts 5, 42. They preached house to house. People owned property. Acts 2, 46. They were breaking bread in their houses. Acts 4, 36 to 37. Joseph Barnabas sold his land. So not only did he have it, he could sell it so he could get money. See? Yeah, it's biblical, folks. Acts 5, verse 1, Ananias and Sapphira sold a possession of land, which tells you not only did they own land, they owned more than one property. They sold a possession of land. A possession of land. They sold a possession. That infers that they had more than one piece of property. Okay. And so if enjoyment of property is not in the charter, and clearly enjoyment of property to all Canadian citizens, especially the God-fearing Christian, you know that biblically you're supposed to have enjoyment of property because it's a right from God, then you can't be in good standing with God and invoke the charter. All right. And so speaking of enjoyment of property, Kelly, why don't you kind of mention a little bit of your story on how they handled you? So you have things in appeal, and how did they handle you and your property?
Well, obviously, when public health came with the Section 22 order, they dropped that off. I was out of town when they dropped it off. So I told my staff just to lock up because they asked me to lock the doors. I didn't want to put that burden on my staff, so they locked up. I came back the next day on a Thursday, and I decided I was opening my doors. And we opened up. So the following Wednesday is when public health went to Superior Court and brought the paperwork from Superior Court, and court ordered me to lock my doors. That was at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. At 6 o'clock that night, the sheriff and the police came and read the order and told me they were there to lock my doors. A couple of weeks prior to that, I had a discussion with the property manager who looks after the property for the owners of the property. And I said I was worried based on what was happening through social media and some of the backlash I was getting for standing up to this, that I was worried there could be vandalism or violence on my business. And I felt like I'd have to start staying there to protect it. And his words to me were, put a cot out back if you have to, I don't care. So he basically gave me a verbal lease to stay there, which made it residential. And I had a witness to that conversation. And so when they came that Wednesday night, I basically said, this is my residence. I live here. You can't lock me in or out of my residence. So the sheriff left without locking the doors that night. So he clearly didn't want to do it and clearly understood the situation.
Okay, so let's interrupt there just to send out this note. Guys, the police, I don't believe, at least not the majority, there's can always be potential bad apples, but it appears to me that when the police had an opportunity to not do something, they took it. They didn't, at this point, at least it seems clear that they didn't want to do it. So we got to note that the police thus far, there has been many times where they were given power that they did not take. They took opportunities to not enforce laws and power that they were given, including that, that curfew, that curfew talk. But please continue, because that, I just wanted to make a note that, that whole, like, we don't want to go into this defund the police stuff. Absolutely not. We want our police, and we want them to protect us, right? That's why we're talking about dodging the charter and invoking the Canadian Bill of Rights, okay? Because that is a federally regulated statute, and police officers are federally regulated, okay? So we have to, support our police is what I'm saying, despite some that you might not like as much, okay, but overall, they are supporting us. So please continue, Kelly.
Yeah, so after that Wednesday when they left, then the court brought back the motion and took me back to court Friday, and they gave me 2 hours notice to be on a Zoom call for Superior Court. So basically the court put more pressure on the sheriff to make them have to come and lock me down. So that was that Friday. And of course, it wasn't overturned, and the judge said, whether it's right or wrong, the order stands. And that was, so that night, that day, I went back expecting the police to be there before I got back to my business. I was somewhere else for the Zoom meeting, and they weren't. So we stayed open, and we had a good night. Well, it was 5:30 in the morning the next morning when the SWAT team and the sheriff came to lock me down, and they didn't want to be there. You could tell they were forced. And I want to add something too. November 19th, when I was in Superior Court, they only allowed 15 people in the courtroom, and there was, from what I've been told, probably about 100 people outside supporting us. And there was 10, as many, I think one police officer said there was 10 plainclothes police officers there, and different police officers went to people outside, showed their badge, and let them know that they were there for their protection, and to also let them know that they had our backs and they supported us. So that's huge. And so the cops
Awesome.
aren't the enemy here. And I have a lot of friends who are police officers. A lot of them drink at my place. I've played hockey with many police officers. They are not the problem here. See, they're civilians too, and they understand that they're one of us. Like to defund the police. I mean, that's part of the strategy to rip a democracy apart. You create that hatred towards the police. It's all part of the script that they're doing here, and it's worked quite well for them. And we have to stand up to it and not let that divide happen. Because I'll tell you right now, the police, for the most part, are on our side. Because back when the orders to pull people over and not let people freely move around, all 44 police units in the province, as a collective, said no. That's pretty huge right there.
That's huge. And so we don't want that the police to turn on us. That's why they are trying to influence people to turn on the police, right? And so we don't do that. We don't do that. The police have had our backs. Okay, I'm talking about overall. Listen, guys, no matter what, we can always find a bad apple here or a bad apple there. But overall, I got to tell you, the police have been excellent and they have our backs. So let's not fall for the trick. And again, we're going to make this point. They forced the arm, right? They forced the arm of the police on that one. They actually, the police made them go all the way with it. Let's just put it that way. And so we made that point, and I really, really want you guys to recognize that controlled opposition, the bad people, the same people who are in support of the chart, okay, those same people would love it for you to turn against your main protection, which would be indeed the police. And again, I'm going to repeat this. They're federally regulated. So when they go to do something, the federal statutes come into play, and the Canadian Bill of Rights is a great federal statute to use for our freedom. So we do not want to speak in that manner. We want to continue to do everything we can to recognize that the police have had our backs. And so let's support them as they support us, okay? So that the relationship doesn't get broken. Now, I want to talk about this section 22 real quick, because again, Every single solitary Canadian citizen is going to want to hear this. In Section 22 of the, is it Health and Safety Protection Act?
Yeah.
Okay, it's called HPPA. So please do look it up.
Yeah.
You will see in that section that, in fact, before I say what it says, Kelly, in the courtroom, you actually made the public health admit that there was absolute not even one case of the disease, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not in any shape, way, or form in your restaurant whatsoever, staff, patrons, there wasn't one case, correct?
Yeah. And they've based the essence of the 22 order was all around immediate risk of the virus having an impact on my business and the community, where we've argued from day one that there's no immediate risk, and we've proven there isn't immediate risk. So even in court on the 19th, they got to the point where they were actually talking about from immediate to, well, there may be a risk. So they've already started backtracking. And we had the top doctor for Kingston Public Health on the stand. We summoned him to court. And I asked them all those questions. Is there any knowledge of me having COVID, the disease? Is there any knowledge of any of my staff? Any outbreaks in the community? Have there been reported outbreaks in the community? He answered no to everything. I even asked him, can vaccinated people spread the virus? Which he answered, yes, they can. So, it's just, that was perfect stuff to get on record moving ahead. It was good that we were able to get him on the stand and ask those questions for sure.
And so to all my Christian brothers and sisters, I'm going to tell you right now, go into Leviticus, who gets quarantined for the safety of the public, but they actually had to have the disease. They had to have you did not quarantine healthy people. Okay. So again, biblically, way off on this. The public health is way off because, and for all my Canadian citizens, think about what that means. If they can say that there may exist a communicable disease, think about what kind of power you've just given the public health unit. They can walk in potentially anywhere and say, and remember, it's based on their opinion. There's no documentation. If someone is in public health and their opinion is, hey, we heard someone sneeze twice. It seems reasonable to us that, who knows? Well, it's allergy season. Yeah, but you know what? Just in case there could be a risk there. And I need you to know, as my Canadian citizens, I need you to know, best as I can tell, don't assume that only applies to businesses. Best as I can tell, they could use that about just about anywhere. So if you live in an apartment.
Don't think that's not coming next. Don't think that if they are successful with me and other small businesses, which they're clearly trying to wipe out and get rid of the middle class, people's front doors are next. I mean, like you said, nothing new under the sunshade. People need to review their history and take a look at what's happened in the past. And it's being relived again as we speak right now. Because
that clause is I believe, is 3 words, or may exist. That gives them carte blanche to their opinion. And you don't have to be, and again, proven in Kelly's case, you don't even have to have one case, not one anywhere. No, we're of the opinion that one could maybe at some point exist. And even if we're wrong, it doesn't matter because it was a reasonable opinion. See, the opinion was reasonable. It could have happened. I mean, if that's not totalitarianism, then I don't know what is. And you should be really, really concerned, regardless of what your opinion is on the whammo tammo. You need to be really, really concerned. Why? Well, because if the whammo tammo doesn't prevent you from getting it or spreading it, they could use 22 on you. And you could sit there and scream, yeah, but I'm doubled. It doesn't matter. We're hearing a little too much sniffling. We're getting a little too much coffee waffy in over here. And our opinion is that you guys are a little, you're not taking enough vitamin C around this house. See? So you need to be really concerned. And again, I appeal to my Christian brothers and sisters. Examine yourselves. 2 Corinthians, that you be in the faith. Okay. In fact, I'm going to read, because I know that I wrote that scripture down. As 2 Corinthians All right. Chapter 13, verse 5. Verse 5. Examine yourselves to see if you be in the faith. And I think, along with Kelly's help here, we've proven that all these laws are not biblical. They are anti-Bible. They are anti-freedom. They are anti-Christ. It's really that simple. So I have to tell you straight out, and I appeal this to my Christian brothers and sisters. If you are going to continue invoking the charter and supporting these nefarious, immoral, and illegal laws, then you are either deceived, much like the Galatians, chapter 3, oh, foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you? So you might indeed be saved, but you're bewitched, you're deceived. And if it's not that, you could indeed be false prophet, controlled opposition. I can't judge your heart, but I can tell you this. If you continue to invoke the charter, if you continue to act on that, then that is idolatry. You're saying that the state gets to declare it, and that's not what we believe. We're all under God. Okay. And for my fellow citizens out there that may not be Christians, you have to fully understand, though, that regardless of what your position is, you should agree that the state doesn't give you your rights. You're a human being born with those rights, period. And
God-given human rights. And for me, I'm following the God's law in all of this. And, it is our duty to disobey dishonest orders. And these orders are very dishonest and illegal.
And we like to say that we're not civilly disobedient. They're being civilly disobedient by breaking the true laws of the land, and even more importantly, the true laws of God.
Yes.
So our overall message here is don't invoke the charter. You're the only one who can invoke it. Don't invoke it, period. And we've given you the reasons. And we'll just tap in real quick to common law. And we kind of, maybe, Kelly, I can have you kind of discuss a little bit what common law is and what case law is.
Well, yeah, I mean, these are, like I said, we have a lot of case law we're using, and these are laws that have been precedent setting, cases that have set precedent that we can use. And further to the discussion of the vaxxed or unvaxxed and spreading, there's literature out now that is actually stating that the vaccinated actually have a higher percentage rate of spreading the virus than unvaxxed people. So there's a lot of truths coming out that have been hidden or suppressed that are, coming to light on a daily basis now, Shade.
Yeah, because that's the other thing, right? It's really very, very early in the game here. But what it really comes down to, and I don't mind saying this, at the end of the day, it's quite frankly, I'm going to just say it straight. It's ultimately irrelevant because we're talking about the security of the person. We're talking about bodily autonomy. You don't get to tell me that I have to eat broccoli any more than you get to tell me I have to get whammo-tammoed on a regular basis. You don't get to do that. That's illegal and it's immoral, both from the true laws of Canada and the true laws of God. So however you might feel, and I do think that more evidence is going to come in, but regardless of how you feel about that, ultimately, we believe in the freedom to choose what goes into your person, right?
And that's exactly why I'm taking the stance I'm taking. This has never been about myself or my business. We could say it's about our rights and the freedoms that God gave us. But for me, on a grand scale, this is about God, period. The stance I'm taking. And there's no other way to describe it other than that. That's as big as it gets.
Man, I don't think we could have a better ending to this conversation in this video. And I just appreciate you, brother, on behalf of Canadian citizens. I appreciate that you are willing to take such a stance in the name of Jesus Christ, under the power that God has given you. Because I'll tell you, I have to tell you right now, there's just no way that anybody could actually have this much tenacity, I'll call it courage, to be willing to risk his entire livelihood because he doesn't want to harm in any shape, way, or form other human beings by breaking the laws of the land, and even more importantly, breaking the laws of God. And so I, my friend, I just want to say thank you so much. And
Amen to that.
all right, man. Well, God bless you, brother. And thank you so much. Stay on after, and we'll have a little chatteroo, and who knows, maybe it'll be a blooper reel or something after.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. And for all of you who have watched this video, I just really hope and pray that it's been edifying for you. And I hope that in some shape, way, or form, it helps you, because ultimately we just want to help people. And we just hope that that's what it does. So thanks again, guys. Thank you, Kelly. And thank you all for listening.
Yeah,
Grace and
God
peace.
bless.
God bless you. Peace.